I'm Geoff from GC2 Photo Club, and in this video I'm going to show you Photoshop selection tools, how to use them, what selections are for, and some useful tips and shortcuts on how to improve your selections workflow. But first, let's go to the computer. Okay, so here we are with Photoshop open and an image selected. There are four main types of selections split into three tool groups. These are geometric selections, the Marquee tools, keyboard shortcut M, that's these ones here. Freehand selections, the Lasso tools, keyboard shortcut L, that's these ones here. The quick selection tool, which makes selections based on edge contrast, that's this one here. And the Magic Wand tool, which makes selections based on colour. If you right click on the quick selection tool, you will see that the Magic Wand tool is hidden beneath it. As you can see, these two are linked together in the tools panel, and they both have the shortcut W. Let's have a look at the geometric selection tools, that's these ones here. The first one is the rectangular marquee selection tool, which is the default, and is represented by this icon here. This tool makes a selection in the shape of a rectangle. You make your selection by activating the tool by clicking on it in the tools panel or using the keyboard shortcut. In this case, I'm going to click on the icon here to activate it. You then click and drag in your image to make your selection to the required size in the shape of a rectangle, like so. To reposition the selection, just click inside the selection boundary and drag it into position, like so. So you can move your selection boundary anywhere you require. We'll leave it here. If you want your selection to be square instead of rectangle, hold down the Shift key as you click and drag in your image. I'll show you how to do that. Let's deselect this one for now. Select, deselect. As I drag, hold down the Shift key, and our selection is now a perfect square. Once again, you can click and drag in the image to position it as you require. The next tool in the geometric selection tools is the elliptical marquee selection tool. You find this by right clicking on the rectangular marquee tool, and it's hidden under there. There it is, the second one down. If you click on this to select it, you now have your elliptical marquee tool selected. This tool works in exactly the same way as the rectangular marquee tool, but drags out an elliptical shape selection, like so. You can drag out a circle by holding down the Shift key as you make your selection, just as you made the square with the rectangular marquee tool. Let's deselect this to show you. Just hold down the Shift key as you click and drag to drag out a circle instead of an ellipse, like so. Let's deselect that circle. We're going to select deselect. The final two geometric selection tools are the single row and single column marquee tools. These tools select a single row or column that is 1 pixel wide or 1 pixel high. They're not used frequently, but could be helpful to select a single line such as a scratch. You can find these tools by right clicking on our active geometric tool at the moment, which is the elliptical marquee tool, and you'll find the single row marquee tool and the single column marquee tool. Let's select the single column marquee tool and drag out a single column. As you can see, it's only 1 pixel wide. Let's deselect our column. I'm going to select deselect. The next group of selection tools are the freehand selection tools. You will find them over here in this panel, situated below geometric selection tools or the marquee tools. The first one is the Lasso tool, which is the default, represented by this icon here. This tool makes freehand selections by clicking and dragging a custom shape as if drawing with a pen. But don't confuse this with the pen tool, which is very different. The selection becomes active when you join the start and finishing points together, thus lassoing an area. Let's select the Lasso tool, draw our shape, join the start and finishing points together, and we have our selection. Let's deselect our selection to show you the next tool. The next tool in the freehand selection tools is the Polygonal Lasso tool, which works by clicking to set points in straight lines around the area you wish to select. It is very useful as you don't need a steady hand to draw complex shapes that contain straight lines. Let's right click to select the Polygonal Lasso tool, like so. Let's make a selection by clicking and dragging in straight lines. Click to add a point so that we can change direction. Once again, click to add a point, change direction. There. Finally, join up the 2 points by double clicking, and you'll see we've made a selection here with straight lines, and we didn't have to do it freehand. Let's deselect our selection so that I can show you the next tool. The next freehand selection tool is the Magnetic Lasso tool. You can find this tool by right clicking on the Polygonal Lasso tool. It's this one down here. Let's select that. The Magnetic Lasso tool is useful for finding complex shapes and selecting them as you click and drag around your subject, placing anchor points. It makes its selection based on the contrast of the subject, for example a sky against a building. The selection finds the edges as if being attracted by a magnet. Let me show you how. Click and drag along, selecting your anchor points, and you'll see that the selection is automatically finding the edges of the building as if being drawn to them like a magnet. Okay, when you want to join up your selection, just double click at the joining point here. As you can see, we've now selected this building against the sky, and it's clicked to the edges automatically as if by magnet. This tool is tricky to use and takes a bit of practice. You can double click at any time to join up your selection. Let's deselect this one to show you how. If I click to start here and start selecting along the edge of the building, if I now double click, it will join up that selection here. Let's deselect this to show you the next tool. The next tool is the Quick Selection tool, which makes an instant selection based on sharp definition of edges. It is useful for quickly selecting an area such as a sky, which you can refine later. You can find the Quick Selection tool here below the Magnetic Lasso tool. Let's click on to activate it. You then click in your sky area. You may have to do this several times to select the sky. As you can see, we've made a very quick and accurate selection of our sky here. Let's deselect this to show you the next tool. The next tool is the Magic Wand tool, which you can find by right clicking here on your Quick Selection tool and clicking on Magic Wand tool to select. This tool selects areas based on the difference between two areas of colour. Let's open a more suitable image. This tool is very useful selecting an area that has a strong uniform colour, such as a tomato, or in this case this Toastmaster's jacket. Just click in the area you wish to select, and the tool will automatically find the edges for you based on the strength of the colour. As you can see, it's made quite a good job of selecting the red area. Let's deselect this selection so that I can show you how you can change the tolerance. At the top here you have the tolerance settings, which allows you to set the range of the colour you're sampling. This allows you to increase or decrease the range of similarity in colour that is selected to give you a more accurate selection. For instance, if I set a tolerance of 10 and make my selection, it will select a much more refined area of colour. Whereas if I deselect this and select a tolerance of 100, it will select a much greater area of colour. As you can see, that's a much more accurate selection of the Toastmasters coat. Now that we have seen the selection tools and their uses, now let's have a look at some of the things that you can do with a selection once it is active. Make a selection with one of the selection tools. In this case I'm going to make a rectangular selection with the rectangular marquee tool. Now I have made my selection, any adjustments that I now make will only apply to the portion of the image that is selected. For example, I can make an adjustment to the exposure, I can turn the image selection black and white, or I can add a solid colour fill layer, or I can even choose Edit Fill Content Aware to repair the selected area. Use your imagination and play with different adjustments to learn what can be achieved. Let's have a look at a couple of different adjustments. Click on Layer Adjustments to make an adjustment layer. Click on black and white, click OK, and you should see that only our selected area has been turned black and white. Let's have a look at a different adjustment. So let's go back in our history panel to where we just had our selection. Let's go different adjustment layer, new adjustment layer. In this case, let's change the exposure to our selected area. OK, and you'll get the properties box here, allowing us to turn the exposure down in our selected area or taking it up in our selected area. Let's go back again in our history panel to just our selection. Let's have a look at another adjustment layer, new adjustment layer. In this case, let's change the hue saturation. Okay, in our properties panel, let's change the saturation there, and you'll see it's only affecting our selected area once again. Let's go back in our history panel so that I can show you some more tips that will help with your selections workflow. If you want to drag out your selection from the center point, hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac as you drag out your selection. For example, let's start our selection from the top of the flag mast here on the boat. If I hold down the Alt key as I click and drag, the top of the mast stays in the center of our rectangular selection, however far we drag it out. When using the rectangular marquee tool, if you want to make a selection to a fixed ratio, such as 10:8, click on Normal up here next to Style, then click on Fixed Ratio, then add your chosen settings in the width and height boxes. For instance, at the moment we've got 10:8, but let's change that to 12:10. Now when I click and drag, the ratio of our rectangle will be 12:10. To add to any selection, hold down the Shift key as you make your selection, like so. If I hold down the Shift key, I'm adding another rectangle to my selection there. You can also use the Add to Selection icon at the top here. So click on there and add to your selection. As you can see, it's added another rectangle to our selection here. Alternatively, to subtract from any selection, hold down the Alt or Option key on the Mac as you drag to make your selection. and you'll see that it will remove that part of the selection. You can also click on the Subtract from Selection icon at the top here and remove that part from your selection. To intersect with a selection, hold down the Shift plus Alt Option key on a Mac as you drag, or click on the Intersect with Selection icon at the top of the screen. That's this one here. This cuts out and retains the portion of the selections that overlap, like so. As you can see, only the parts that overlapped are still selected. One of the most useful parts of these edits is that you can change tools to add, subtract, or intersect selections as you work. For example, let's change to the Elliptical tool. Click on Add to Selection, and let's add an ellipse to our selection, like so. We can also subtract an ellipse from our selection, like so, or intersect an ellipse with our selection, like so. To delete a selection, just click anywhere outside the selection with a selective tool active, like so. But beware, the tool will still be active and will try to start another selection. So be careful if you're using the Magic Wand tool, the Quick Selection tool, and particularly the Magnetic Lasso tool. Just select something like the Hand tool to avoid problems. To move a selection boundary, click inside your boundary and drag into place, or use the arrow keys on your keyboard. For example, let's activate our Elliptical Marquee tool, click to drag out an ellipse, click and drag inside our boundary to place our selection boundary anywhere we require within the image. We can also use the keyboard arrows to move it to the left using the left arrow, or to the right using the right arrow, or up and down to move it into place how we desire. To cut out and move a selection, use the Move tool, keyboard shortcut V, or select the Move tool and use the arrow keys. That's this one here. Use the arrow keys to cut out and move our selection. Move it back into place again. Let's go back in our history panel. To invert a selection, choose Select Inverse. First of all, let's select a Marquee tool, make a selection, then click Select Inverse, and you'll see that now the inverse is selected rather than the original selection here. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Shift plus Control Command plus I. I've changed to a different image so that we can see the next few tips more clearly. To invert the colours in a selection, use the keyboard shortcut Control on a PC, Command on a Mac plus I. Let me show you. First of all, make a selection. In this case we're going to use the Elliptical Marquee tool. Make a selection. To invert the colours, keyboard shortcut Control plus I, and you'll see that the colours have now been inverted. Let's deselect that selection. If you want to move a selection that you are making with one of the geometric marquee tools but haven't finished dragging it out yet, hold down the spacebar and drag it to a new location. Then release the spacebar and continue making your selection. Let me show you how to do that. With the Elliptical Marquee tool active, click and drag out, hold down the spacebar, move to a new location, continue dragging out your ellipse, and there you have your selection in a different place. Be careful not to release the mouse at any stage during that operation. If you are making a selection with the Lasso tool and you want to change to the Polygonal Lasso tool to continue making your selection, Press and hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and release the mouse button. To return to the Lasso tool, click and hold down the mouse button and release the Alt Option key. Let me show you how to do that. First of all, select the Lasso tool, start to make your selection, hold down the Alt key, release the mouse button. You now have the Polygonal Lasso tool. Release the Alt Option key and you're back to the Lasso tool again, and your selection has been completed. To cut out a selection and move it to a new location, hold down the Control key, Option key on a Mac, and drag it into position. Once you have started to move the selection, you can release the Control Option key. Let me show you how to do that. Hold down the Control key, start to move your selection. You can release the Control key once you've started to move. Just move your selection into a new position. Let's use the History panel to return to our original position. If you wish to move and duplicate a selection at the same time, first of all make your selection. In this case I'm going to use the Elliptical Marquee tool to make a selection there. Then activate the Move tool, that's this one at the top here. Then hold down the Alt key on a PC, Option key on a Mac, as you click and drag into your new position, and you'll see that you've also got a duplicate and you can position it anywhere you require, like so. Just click on any other tool, such as the Hand tool here, to deactivate the Move tool. Then confirm your selection by clicking Select Deselect, and there you've duplicated your selection and moved it as well. That concludes our look at the selection tools and some of the various methods of using them. Hope you found that tutorial useful. Please go to our website GC2photoclub.com for more videos and information. I'm Geoff Cable from GC2 Photo Club. Hope to see you again soon.